There's too much mourning going on this morning. It's too morningish. Did you just plop into the toilet, Johnny? I love it. Plop. Amazing timing. I know. I know. Get on out of here with that. What's up, my man? What's up, my man, Maine? How's it going? Got pretty little wildflowers in my lawn. Little purple flowers, dude. No joke. Who has purple lawn? This guy. Pretty day out today, yeah. I've said this before and been wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is the official turn towards warmer weather. Last time I said that, it ended up being like sub 60 degrees for 5 days in a row. My dude. My guy. Hello. Spring started 2 days ago. I know that technically spring started 2 days ago, but it's been dragging its ass over here. So you guys read this doomery news story? I mean, it's true, but it is very doomery. About the poles being like between not just a few degrees hotter, like 50 to 60 to 70 to 80 degrees hotter than they're supposed to be right now. You guys heard this? What is your beard limit? Is there a point where you say, okay, it's long enough? Well, I would like my beard probably in a perfect world to be a little longer than it is, but there is this thing called terminal length, and it's typically genetically encoded. So your beard, depending on your genetics, will only grow so long before it stops. And this is the terminal length of my beard. I haven't trimmed this beard in probably like 6 months. So this is it. What you see is what you get. Same thing with your head hair. You can look it up. It's called terminal length. My beard's terminal length is sad, so I just stick with a goatee. That is your, your prerogative. I suppose I don't blame you. Dude, let's look at Johnny being all respectful today. You just said, please get a profile pic. You guys can't. You can't not do it now. Does your back hurt more because you're in your 40s? Probably not because I'm in my 40s. But yeah, dude, my back hurts a lot. Wish I could grow a beard. Gotta wait till I start testosterone. I'm so worried, though, for the awkward in-between phase, the whiskers. Gotta push through it. Gotta push right through it. Every beard is awkward when you first start growing it out. No beard just looks great at every stage, you know. You gotta stick with it. You gotta power through the scrubby times of the beard. My cheek hair just comes in ratty and sparse even after 25 years of growing facial hair. I mean, some people, you know, that's genetic too. You know, like American Indian folks, they don't really grow beards. They have very, very sparse facial hair, if any at all. You know, maybe you got a little blend of that. So what do we want to talk about today, fellas? You watched Threads? Cool. Neato burrito. Pretty scary shit. I remember a week ago you mentioned rehashing the rules. Has that happened yet? No, not really. I've done some thinking on it. But we'll see. Scary movies give me a weird rush. Won't watch supernatural movies, though, too unexplainable. I like a supernatural movie, too. I'm recording a mini-sode today on demonology. But I'm not covering the boring stuff about, like, the history of demonology or delving too deeply into the, like, different grimoires and stuff from the 1500s. I'm just going to talk about some of the demons. I'm just going to discuss some of the different demon princes and dukes and marquises and stuff that you can summon according to the Grand Grimoire or whatever. I watched a kind of, I guess it's a horror movie, kind of like an action horror movie yesterday that I've seen it before. Fallen. You guys seen Fallen with Denzel? Denzel Washington's in it. James Gandolfini's in it. Fucking what's his name? Guy that plays Walters in the Big Lebowski's in it. I remembered it was good from back in the day, but I hadn't seen it in probably like 20 years. I was like, oh, yeah, John Goodman. Yeah. It's a good flick. Donnie, you're out of your element. A pretty good movie, like a detective. Like it's presented very noir, but it's got like a pretty good twist to it. Like, you know how noir movies have that, like, of all the offices in all of Los Angeles, this dame had to walk into mine. You know, it's got that like narration between scenes, and it's Denzel's character that's doing it. At least you think so. At least you think it's Denzel Washington's character that's providing narration. But then you find out at the end, spoiler alert, it's the demon. Cool. Yeah, it does have a good twist to it. It's got a twist that not a lot of people are going to call, you know. Unreliable narrators, yes. Yes. It did have some stuff in it that I think wasn't good. Like Denzel's got like a mentally challenged brother in it or whatever who doesn't come off mentally challenged at all. That's how Blade Runner was supposed to be, but they cut out all the narration from Harrison Ford. Yeah, I remember that. Seems like film has gone away from the narration format in recent years, excluding documentaries anyway. Even documentaries have moved away from the traditional, like, floating narrator, you know? Like, a lot of documentaries are just footage and text collated. It's pretty neat. Yeah, it's a style of, like, it's like a film trope that doesn't get used a whole lot, the narrator. Yeah, that's what I thought too, Johnny. That Blade Runner was fun. Like they tried to like layer in narration after the fact because they were afraid people weren't going to understand what was going on in the movie. David Attenborough docus will always be goated. Yeah, but he narrates those though. The Ken Burns model. Wow, Ken Burns has a narrator. Like, you know, he does a lot of the like rapid fire like interview questions of different people, but then there's the narrator that talks about everything over top of it. It only lets me send you pesos. That's okay. A peso is just fine. I appreciate it. Thank you for the pesos. Wonderful pesos. 18 cents worth of pesos, dude. Beautiful. Never seen a Ken Burns doc. Any you recommend starting with? It just depends, man. It's like Ken Burns documentaries are like very focused on Americana and like American stories. So I like jazz personally, but if you're not super into the art form, Prohibition is pretty good. Baseball is pretty good. Jazz is my favorite. Yeah, the jazz one it's amazing. It's really really good. It's pretty long. You know, it's a like 7 or 8 part documentary series or something. No, Ken Ham is a Christian guy. Oh, man. Oof. I'm really trying to talk myself out of just ending this. Let's see. What would be a good reason to continue this? It's just one of those days where I'm not feeling like carrying an entire conversation. And chat's not offering up a whole lot. You know. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. You banned all of them? Doubtful. Doubtful. Even the people I banned are still here. Nah, don't worry about it. Don't worry. Be happy. Don't worry. Be happy now. Maybe that will help. I tell you what I'll do. I'll roll my morning joint, bring it out here, twist it up, and we'll see if by then things haven't balanced out a little bit. We're not just throwing out have you seens and talking about obscure things that half or more of the chat hasn't seen. We'll see. Willing to give it a shot, but only because of the pesos. If dude hadn't dropped 18 cents worth of pesos on me, I'd be gone. So you guys better thank him. Time is on my side. Yes, it is. Oh, okay. All right, let's try this again. Good morning, everybody. How's it going? Hmm? How's life? It's good. It's good. It's okay. It's okay. Life is good. Life is okay. I get to go get my permanent crown put on, my freshly drilled tooth today. A little later, after I film and everything. Day off, so can't complain too hard. Nice. That is very nice. I like that. Beautiful. Yeah, don't chat if you're driving, dude. Don't worry about it. Chat status cannot be saved by one person. Any opinions on releasing episodically on VOD services? I'm always a cash grab in the form of milking page engagement. Could easily let us binge seasons, but then we wouldn't be back. I don't really watch a whole lot of shows, my friend. Like, I'm probably the worst guy in the world to have an opinion on that, because if I'm gonna watch a show, it's already out. You know, like I don't bother watching a show that isn't already finished. So I think a really interesting aspect of this war, when we being to look at in retrospect, how much data will the country's equivalent of CIA's and Homeland Security's will get out of it? Huh? Yeah, I don't, and there's no chance. Like, I'll tell you what did it to me. I've never been a huge fan of, like, limited series or whatever the fuck, but I got into, when it was new, I got into Deadwood, and that show just kind of like disappeared off the map. You know what I mean? It ended before it was supposed to end and left me with a real sour taste in my mouth. It took like years for them to make a final movie about it. So yeah, I'm very against that ever happening to me again. You get all drawn into a show. Nothing feels worse than that, dude. Get all sucked into a show, and then all of a sudden, like, it gets canceled because not enough people are watching it. Fuck that. No, thank you. All right. Time to fill a cone. Fill a cone with silicone. Is on my side. Yes, it is. It's been having my mind blown by the three-body problem. I've finished the first book in the three-body problem, that book that I was reading. I moved on to the second one. And, dude, there's some really interesting science fiction in it. There's these things called Sofons. Basically, the idea of a Sofon is this. assuming that like particle accelerators keep getting better and better and better, right? The idea of a Sofon is that you get to the point where your particle accelerator is so powerful that you can unpackage a quantum particle. So this is a tough thing for me to wrap my head around, and maybe it'll be easier for you guys. I think I get it, but only just. So the idea of this is that even though like an electron, right, or a proton or whatever, we'll just say a proton. Even though a proton is an infinitesimally small quantum particle, it's like the way it's explained in the book is it's used like a guy uses a cigarette filter. I don't know if you've ever torn open a cigarette filter, but you know, cigarette filters come in a package this big, right? But if you were to like unwrap them, they're huge. They're like the surface area is huge. Like if you were to carefully unwrap a cigarette filter, it would be like it would cover this whole table, right? But it's crammed down into a tiny little package. And so apparently one of the strong current theories is that that is the truth when it comes to these particles, that even though they're contained in a really, really small package, when you move down the dimensions, so these are like ninth dimensional objects is what they call them in the book, a proton. And they create the alien civilization in this book creates a giant particle accelerator in space that is capable of shifting a proton from the ninth dimension into the lower dimensions, which is where we live, thus unpacking it. So here's the idea. And this is actually a really cool chapter in the first book when the aliens are testing the Sofon. The first thing that happens is that instead of they're trying to get the Sofon to expand into 3 dimensions. Or no, there's two dimensions. They're trying to bring the Sofon from a ninth, the proton from a ninth dimensional object and unpack it into 2 dimensions. That's the idea. So that they can put circuitry on it, basically. We'll get there. And so the first time they try it, they accidentally miss the second dimension and unfold it into the first dimension to where it's just a line. And even though what started as a tiny little microscopic proton, when it's unpacked into the first dimension, it creates this long line of material that slowly, like the people on the alien planet can look up into the sky and see it in the sky, and then it sprinkles down to the ground, and it creates these little strings that slowly but surely they break up and go away. And then the second time, they miss the second dimension and they accidentally unfold it into a third dimension. And when they do that, the sky is filled with these insanely huge geometric shapes. And the implication, this is crazy, the implication is that there's this whole quantum universe. And it talks about the micro and macro scale. We live in the macroverse, and there's this micro universe where, you know, inside of every proton is basically like an entire universe of its own. And so there is some kind of intelligence that lives in it. And when they do these experiments, there's this ethical question that gets drawn up, because when they accidentally expand a proton into the third dimension, eventually all the shapes, the geometrical shapes in the sky, turn into eyes that match the type of eyes that these aliens have that are doing this. And the only thing that they can conclude is that there's some sort of intelligence within that universe that they've tapped into that's able to recreate their eyes. It's also like an explanation for observer effect, right? Or observation effect. And so anyway, eventually they continue going and they manage to unfold a proton into the second dimension. And what happens is that it slowly, they use like high-powered lasers on the planet to push and manipulate this long flat piece until it's encased around a planet. And it's this like incredibly thin, incredibly delicate surface, because it's an expansion of everything that's inside of a proton. And they manage to surround their entire planet with it. And then they use little spaceships to write circuitry on the outside of it. And then, so they put a bunch of circuitry, they basically make an AI out of it. And then at that point, once they've got all the circuitry implanted and debugged, they can control this Sofon that they've created, which is basically like a living particle, like a particle that can be controlled. And so they can shrink it back down to its micro state where it's just an electron or a proton, but still retain control over it. And so that is what the aliens use against human beings to ensure that over the course of 450 years, while they're heading for our planet, we don't make any more scientific discoveries. Their biggest fear as aliens that are coming to destroy the planet or take over the planet is that over the course of the 450 years it's going to take from them to get to from Alpha Centauri 4 light years, it's going to take them about 400 years or so to get to Earth. And they've looked at the Earth's technological level or whatever, and they see that, like, if allowed to just continue, the Earth would end up being as powerful or more powerful than they are by the time they get there. And so they use these Sofons to stop scientific progress by sending a bunch of them to Earth and having them monkey around with particle physics experiments. So their whole job, these Sofons, not the whole job, because they do other things too, they observe the planet. They allow, because of quantum entanglement, they created 4 Sofons, sent 2 of them to the Earth and keep 2 of them on their planet because they're quantum entangled. So anything that Sofon sees, this Sofon sees, and it can report back. And so they send these Sofons to the planet Earth to basically just hover around particle accelerators and monkey with the results so that we can never figure out the true nature of micro space or whatever, the true nature of particle physics, which would allow us to create bigger guns, better engines, allow us to become spacefaring ourselves. So pretty interesting. And all they did was fire 2 electrons or protons at the world. Reading this shit and I'm just like, whoa. I think this book is probably just like a science fiction book written by somebody who's read a lot of like quantum entanglement theory and string theory and shit like that. I don't fully understand it, but it's pretty fucking crazy. Sounds like this is heavily influenced by string theory. It argues there are up to 13 extra dimensions. To prove this, they try to have particles transition between these theorized dimensions. Yeah, that's I don't know if it doesn't call itself string theory in the book, but that sounds about right. It'd be funny if the AI housed in the Sofon in the course of spying on human progress came to sympathize with us. Maybe that's what will happen. Like, I don't know. Both our species and itself being at the whim of these aliens and all. You're right. Who knows? Maybe the Sofon, maybe humanity will be able to take control of a Sofon or something. Who knows? I don't know where it's going, but it's definitely like a slow burn horror novel, because throughout most of the novel, humanity is aware of its own doom approaching. Humanity knows about all of this in the book, because there are human separatists that have been talking with the aliens, communicating back and forth with the aliens, and the aliens have been feeding them just enough information for them to know that humanity is completely doomed. Told them about the Sofons, told them that there's nothing that they can do on the planet that, the aliens can't see. And the book seems to be kind of focused a whole lot on human beings living in a world where they know that 400 years from now, an alien species is going to appear and basically destroy us all so that they can use our planet. We know this. It's proven. Like, there's no real room for interpretation there. And that's part of the horror of it, is that idea. It's different from normal horror, right? It's like normal horror wants to give you that immediate fight or flight. This is something that you can neither fight nor fly from. Maybe the doom is the idea of the Sofon, which causes the destruction rather than something tangible. Fear can rip us apart. That's part of it. That's part of it. They want human beings to be scared and arguing against one another, and it's happening. There's like a whole religious movement on the planet in the book now that worships the aliens. There's a whole like liberal movement that wants to welcome them and allow them to take over the planet and create like a cohabitation with them. There are these people called escapists that want to focus all of human ingenuity on, stuck as it may be in our current technological level because of the Sofon. They want to create, like ships so that, a select few human beings can get on a ship and leave Earth before the aliens get here and wait them out or find another planet or whatever. It's like they live, but the aliens are not really among us yet. The book is called The Three Body Problem. There's 3 books in it. Kind of a weird question. I think you remember you said on DP a long time ago that you had surgery to have gynecomastia removed. I have it pretty bad. I'm just wondering how you went about doing that. I was a kid, dude. And so, like, I hate to tell you this, but, like, it was very much covered by my parents' insurance. I was a child. I was 12 when I got the surgery, going on 13. And so, yeah, dude, it's really going to depend on whether or not your insurance is going to cover it. I think that they were more like apt to cover it because of the fact that I was young, and it causes like dysmorphia for a young cis boy to have breast tissue. It's just not a good thing, right? If that's your situation. And so I think that because I was a kid, it was seen as a more necessary thing to do. But I'm not sure. It's an insurance thing. You will have to go to your doctor and talk to him about it, obviously. And then your doctor will probably refer you out to like a specialist who will examine you and stuff and give you your options. The surgery, as it is pretty invasive. pretty painful surgery. I had it. I had, like I said, I had the surgery when I was 12 years old, and yeah, it was very painful. But yeah, that's how I took care of it. You have health insurance, but you don't think they cover the surgery. Yeah, I mean that makes it a tough decision, right? First dozens would just be supplies and drones to set up the base. Those aliens kind of remind me of the Mysterions from that show, Captain Scarlet. They have a really interesting like culture. Their the name of their species is Trisolarans because they live on a planet named Trisolaris, which is caught up in this kind of absolutely unpredictable, chaotic movement of three different suns. The suns uh, orbit each other, and you know what I mean. It's a very chaotic system in which the suns are constantly being dragged different ways by their own gravity and each other's gravity, and their planet is mixed up in this. And so, rather than having a stable and predictable orbit like the Earth does, they live in a world which is constantly fluctuating between what's called a stable era, which is like this, right? Where the sun hits just enough of the planet's surfaces to keep the climate mild and to foster, growth and expansion. So they'll have a stable era on this planet, Trisolaris. And then, unpredictably, the planet will be whipped into a different orbit and either get too close to one of the suns and burned off, burns everything on the planet, or gets too far away from all three of the suns, gets whiplashed away, and gets deep, deep cold. They know about Earth. Like, their planet is Earth-like when it's in a stable era. So the reason that they're coming here is to save their species from ultimate annihilation and being trapped in this world that ends their civilization over and over and over again. So because of the Trisolarans live in a civilization that is constantly ending and then being reborn, they have developed a unique culture around that. Rather than, expressing themselves artistically or emotionally, they have become a species that relies on just workers, basically. Everybody, because of the fact that the world could end at any moment, it has to be all hands on deck. And so there's no room for the aesthetics. There's no room for philosophy. There's no room for religion. There's no room for art. Because when there's a stable era, everybody has to work to advance until the next end of the world comes. Otherwise, the next stable era will fall behind, etc. So that's, kind of like the conflict of the book. Still, can they find one of the many empty Earth-likes? Seems like they put more effort into developing the Sofon than it would have taken to scope out a vacant new home. It's an interesting question. The idea in the book, the way it's explained in the book, is they need a pinpointed target in order to be able to fire a Sofon at it. So they can't just fire a Sofon into the blackness of the universe and have it roam around and hope it finds like a planet. They don't have time. Like they're a species that's very much aware of the fact that its like its civilization has reached a point where it's going to start receding. In fact, already has, because of the chaotic nature of the planet that they live on. They're progressing slower and slower. There's less of them, and so they know they have to escape now. And so they've got all these listening stations set up at various points surrounding their solar system that are listening for radio waves from a developed civilization, and they end up catching a radio wave from Earth sent out by the Chinese version of SETI. And they use that to pinpoint it. They can't just like, that's one of the things that they're actually discussing before they get the message from Earth. The aliens are discussing like, well, our best bet is to just load up a bunch of people onto our space fleet and set sail for a star and hope that it's got an Earth-like planet around it, because and then they get like the radio transmission from Earth. They're able to pinpoint the Earth's location and the billions of stars that are in the direction of the broadcast. It just seems odd that they can do all the sophisticated manipulation of the quantum realm, but apparently don't have long-range telescopy. Yeah, it is a bit of a plot hole, I suppose.
I mean, part of it is just light. It doesn't matter how good your telescope is, light only travels so fast.
Right. They're like...
waves only travel so fast.
Right. I think it, if anything, it's explained away in the book just by like the necessity of not only constantly progressing in one definable direction, but making sure that you continue to progress after these chaotic eras and shit. And so they become very focused on the singular idea of creating a ship that can travel a decent amount of speed and finding a planet that they know for a fact will support them. And they know they've only got one shot at it. They don't have enough resources or time to create a whole nother fleet. So they know maybe they do have telescopes, and maybe they, are looking at some of these things and saying like, oh, maybe this planet. But the only planet that they know supports complex life for sure is Earth. They could look at the planet, send their entire fleet to that planet, and find out it has an ammonia atmosphere or some shit that they can't do anything with, They know for a fact that life is supported on the Earth. So... light speed is the exit code to leave our simulation. Oh yeah, cynic. Ooh. I made some coffee too, baby.
Are you good? I'll get it here in a sec.
No worries. Just letting you know what's in there. Beautiful bird calls, I know. Got lots of birds around here. We're relatively close to like the beginning of the foothills here, and so we got lots of bird life.
Yeah. I want to see that yellow bud again, though.
Oh yeah, dude. I've seen two.
Yeah.
I want to see that yellow bud again. So many awesome birds. So many pretty birdies singing their song. bird tier list?
That'd be hard.
I like them all, man. Every bird's got something neat about them. There's not like a boring bird. Or if there is, I have never met one. Birds also always have a little personality about them. They've got swagger, man. They're going at it today, man.
Yeah, it's like those little sparrows or whatever that were in our yard with little stripes on their head. They might look boring, but they got 4 fucking genders, man. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Got 4 distinct genders within their species. And when you watch them, they are like the most carefree little things. They're just so, like, I really like envy a lot of animals and their ability to focus on one task almost exclusively and to pursue that without any kind of second guessing or, you know, nobody selfish, nobody providing any assurance, you know what I mean? They just know what they need to do and they do it. 4 genders, are you saying they have liberal arts degrees? Apparently their concept of gender identity has expanded beyond the human concept.
Like males and females have the stripey on their head, and then males and females don't have the stripe on their head.
Yep.
And then the stripey ones are more aggressive, and the non-striped ones aren't.
Crazy.
And they normally pair off stripe and no stripe, but not always.
Sometimes a stripe will fuck another stripe.
Yeah.
So basically alpha and beta for both genders, I guess so. It's kind of what it seems like if you subscribe to that alpha beta kind of language. I just listen to birds like this guy here, this closest one that's singing. And I wonder what the decision process is to sing one note or another. You hear this, dude? He's got like 100 different distinct things he can do with his voice at least. How does he make a decision? I'm going to play this tone instead of that tone. Yeah, right now you're probably right, Ashley. Spring has sprung, so it's definitely like a mating call, probably. But it's just so interesting because I have a feeling that his mating call, while it might be made up of some of the same trills and tones or whatever, or her, I guess, mating call, is probably entirely distinct in composition from any other mating call. Like in the history of this species, there probably hasn't been a member of his species that has combined all these different tones in the exact order that he's doing it now. So he's creating a unique composition on the fly. bird songs actually evolve over time in region. Birds have varying song cultures. I mean, yeah. I mean, you can tell just listening to this one little guy. Oh, thank you, baby. You have to get me one. Oh, coffee. Coffee, please. Coffee, take me away. Coffee. Coffee. Be nice to have a pocket computer translator so that we could hear what they were saying. Like, what if what they're saying doesn't even translate? You know, human communication is limited by human experience and human imagination. Like, what if what they're saying just is like a language that really just can't even be translated to one of our? What if the concepts being relayed are just so bird specific that it would be like them figuring out what we're talking about down here, you know? There's something going on with these birds, man.
It's like little worlds inside Dinor and Cricket's heads too. It's like they get really focused on something that we can't hear, we can't smell.
Yeah.
It's a thought that we can't even comprehend.
Yeah, their little like conception of the world is something that's kind of hard to think. It's hard to imagine. It's hard to think about like what, you know, their senses are like ours, but oftentimes wildly different from ours. Like dogs have a whole smell escape. You know what I mean? That we don't really experience. We experience certain smells, but they experience smells at a much higher intensity. Their hearing is much more acute than ours, so they have a whole soundscape around them that we don't. What we can hear is just a piece of the pie of what they're listening to. Their eyes are not as acute as ours, or at least not as good at determining color detail, and so they rely less on it. And what that tells you is that there's a whole little inner life that you can't even imagine going on every second of every day. You know, he has Dinor or Cricket, and they have this whole perception of the world that is uniquely their own. And we can only begin to like speculate what those things are. We interpret some of their actions this way or that way. Cats can tell where you are in the house at all times, basically, from what I've heard. They're always listening. I know that's the case. You can't go into any room in this house and close the door behind you without eventually, within a few seconds, Cricket coming over to be like, hey, don't shut the door. Cricket has no chill when it comes to like bathroom privacy either. Cricket does not give, neither does Dinor really.
Dinor picked it up from Cricket, I think.
Yeah, Dinor really started barging into the bathroom after he saw Cricket doing it a bunch. But if you don't close the door all the way, you know, if you're just kind of like in your own house, absentmindedly just kind of close the door, sit down on the toilet, you better be ready for anybody who's chilling at your house to see you with your pants down because Cricket's coming in.
Just gonna go.
Yep.
He slams the door open too.
Yep.
Just peek through.
Just be like, what's up? Oh, you pooping? Cool. And just like walk over to you and you're like, bro, can I?
Oh, and if you do close the door, it's like.
Oh yeah, dude. If you do close the door, he'll scratch at the knob. He knows how to open a door. He just doesn't have the equipment. Does Cricket unspool the toilet paper? He does not. He's not a toy. He does like paper a lot, but he's not a boy that goes after the toilet paper roll.
I don't think it's crunchy enough for him.
Yeah, he likes crispy paper. So he'll grab like a, I don't know, piece of paper off the counter or
A book.
a book, and he'll just go to town. Give him a box full of gift wrap for Christmas. I mean, he does love any time a present is opened.
You have like one box with just like a little spool of like packing paper just in there.
Yep. But animals vocalize a lot, and a lot of times it's for our benefit because we vocalize, so they pick up little.
There's a reason why women tend towards cats. It's because they're very good at mimicking baby cries.
Oh yeah, and the purrs and everything. Yeah. And natural cuddliness. Mr. Flappy. Mr. Flappy Ears. Most animals are driven by instinct. It's all about avoiding death and having enough energy to hunt your next meal, unless domesticated life is a hard struggle every day. I've heard cats taken from their mom at a young age and around other cats tend to vocalize more with humans. Yeah, I mean, everything, just like you. The circumstances of your birth and your childhood had a profound and unchangeable effect on you. You know, you can go back and understand it and rationalize it, but the fact that you are who you are started that day. It was an unbroken chain of events out of your control. It started that day. It molded you into what you are now. And you can look back over the expanse of it, but, you know, can you really understand it? It is, after all, the source of your perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Cricket is a snuggly boy, and he's a talkative boy because he was a bottle baby.
Yep. He was bottle fed as a kitten, and so he's just like, just about like the, I don't know, man. He's just like the most cuddly cat ever.
Pliable too.
Yeah.
Just kind of, you don't have to pick them up the special way you're supposed to pick up cats. You just pick them up.
Yeah, Cricket doesn't mind being picked up and toted around a little bit. He actually likes it. He'll cry for it sometimes. Sometimes he'll just be inconsolable, and he'll try and like, all right, let's check your water, let's check your food. I don't, you know, everything's fine. And then you're like, oh, you want to pick me up? Okay, got it. Pick him up like a sack of taters and walk around with him a little bit. Like a sack of potatoes. And then Cricket is basically like, he's about visits. Mm-hmm. He goes out on about his business, I'd say, most of the day. But part of that business is it's time for me to prowl around the house and do a visit to everybody. So I'll be sitting in, you know, if I got my door cracked open while I'm doing work, he'll just jump up in my lap. I like how cats are almost all the same shape, just larger or smaller in size. Cheetahs are the only significant variation, and technically hyenas are feline. Hyenas are not feline. Hyenas are from an extinct line that was that had aspects of both canine and feline. Like they're the last remaining. I remember reading about this at some point that like there were two significant lines of mammals that came out that they're dominant now on the planet, canine and feline. And then there were several others, I guess, at different points. But hyenas are from like a different branch of evolution, an unholy fusion of dog and cat. Yeah, basically, from what I understand, hyenas are kind of a very strange mix between canine and feline. Perhaps like a line that happened before the species completely individuated. You know, when they were still a common species.
I guess there's a whole suborder called Feliformia, which is like
Feliformia.
cat-like,
Yeah.
but not feline,
Right.
just feliform.
Yeah, that was the word.
So it's hyenas, mongooses.
See, would you ever guess that hyenas are closely related to a fucking mongoose looking at them?
No.
Like they look like demon dogs. Like hyenas are just insanely they're dog like enough to where they cut the jib of a dog, but then when you watch and listen to them, they're nothing like a dog.
Mm-hmm.
They don't move like dogs. They don't act like dogs.
Yeah, there's another suborder that's Caniformia, dog-like carnivores.
Right. So I was right.
Which is bears, foxes, raccoons, seals.
Yeah, that's crazy. Are bears canines? Yes. Well, they're the caniformia or whatever. They're not necessarily distinctly canine, but they're canine-like.
And, that's a very human-biased classification. Because we domesticated cats and dogs before we started
That is true.
organizing them into taxa and shit, so a different culture might be like bear-like or mongoose-like or something.
Yeah, that's true. What was the best animal used for humanity? Bees, horses, whales, dogs, cats, fish. Was the best animal use for humanity? Like how? Probably bees, honestly. Like if you think about like how humans have used animals for various things at various times, whether it means like killing them to eat them or use their body parts for oil or whatever the fuck. Like bees have to be like, dude, they're so like they allow us to make areas that are not like agriculturally viable. Like there's a whole business of bringing bees from one place to another to help pollinate a field of wheat or whatever, you know.
They would be dead without bees. They'll starve to death.
Right, yeah. Plants wouldn't be able to grow. Like they're integral to how plants move from one place to the next and integral to like how crops are fertilized and shit. Bees have to be the top, man. There's and think about it too. They're exploited in a way that does absolute like, well, if you're a good beekeeper, I guess there are ways of keeping bees that are pretty bad for them or whatever, but like it's totally possible for you to use an entire colony of bees for your own ends, down to the fact that you've made their fucking honeycombs, their hives and everything. You've just taken them out of nature, put them in captivity, and they thrive just like a bee out in the wildwood.
They're chill. They don't like they're not. When you capture bees in a beekeeping thing, you don't surround them with glass or whatever. They just choose to stay.
Right. Well, yeah, because that's what they
hive.
do. Their queen is there. the larvae are there. The whole point of the hive is to sustain that. And so they go on about their lives and they do what they do in the wild. You don't have to pin them. You know what I mean? It's not like a horse where you have to make a pen, otherwise they'll wander off, or a cow or a dog. A bee is like, you know, you let them out into nature and they come back willingly. They dance and they release pheromones to mark different types of events. So they have a whole communication, like a complex communication structure, because they can tell each other distance. They've done a lot of these crazy experiments where, like, they observe, they'll take a beehive, place it, and then place like half a mile away the food source, and they'll watch how the bees go out in all directions, and then the ones that find the food source, they'll watch when they come back, and the other bees will gather around them, and they do this kind of like spin and dance, and they release a certain kind of pheromone. And with all of that input, they're basically able to tell the other bees in the hive the rough area that they need to go to get food. And they've done this like day to day. They will like move the food source to different places, move the food source farther away, and bees are able to communicate to one another like, here, there's where the food is. You know what I mean? Not just pointing, like about half a bee mile that way, you're going to pass a big oak or whatever and hang a right, and then right there is going to be a big field of flowers, and you need to send about this many people because there's this many flowers there. It's like, what?
Hive animals, if they were bigger, would probably rule the world.
Yeah, it's one of the things we covered in one of the shows, right? Is that like if insects weren't limited by their exoskeletal structure by gravity, they would rule the world unequivocally.
You fucking give a beehive like a computer for a robot, man.
No,
doomed.
we would all be doomed. Yeah, ants as well are fucking crazy. Their societal structure, like, see, the thing is like they're so different from us. We're so reliant on the individual.
Mm-hmm.
We as a species have always relied on exceptional individuals to push us forward.
Mm-hmm.
Not true for hives. There is no such thing as an exceptional individual in a hive.
No.
They are all units of one purpose. They're multiple entities, but they all have a singular purpose.
So yeah, if you ever see a scientist given like a bee a remote control, that's the end of the world right there.
Man, yeah, we need to, like, science should only go so far. But yeah, I mean, gravity is our best friend, because gravity and oxygen.
Yeah.
Because it's not just gravity that limits the bugs, but they have a limited capacity to absorb oxygen from the atmosphere. So when oxygen was richer on the planet, bugs were bigger. But there's an upper limit that they can reach because of gravity. They don't have an internal skeleton, which means they don't have a very like, think of a human skeleton as like a column. It's like a pillar at the center of the body that grounds it, absorbs shock, etc. So we can get about, as big as me, basically. But
the exceptions of people that are like 8 feet tall, the max.
Yeah. I mean, there are outlying exceptions and shit, but yeah. I mean, a human being usually doesn't get any higher than 7 feet tall. Mm-hmm. That's about the limit of our, of our growth. Bugs, it's much smaller because they don't have that central pillar. They have an exoskeleton, and so they got all their mushy bits inside being drawn down by gravity, and all they can have is this thin exoskeleton on the outside. So when that shit starts to get too heavy, it makes it implausible for that animal to continue to exist. If not for that, like if bugs had evolved a way to be more oxygen efficient, there might be a whole different paradigm on this planet.
Yeah.
In fact, there almost certainly would be, because ants, like, one of the things that typify them is that within their sphere of influence, they're merciless. Mm-hmm. They are absolutely like the most warlike thing that you can imagine. It's base warfare around every ant colony. They will kill any other colony that tries to set up shop. They will kill anything in their way and take it back to the fucking hive. Like, look at jungle ants, like army ants and bullet ants and shit. They're fucking insane, bro.
And they're
Leaf
awesome
cutters.
at construction too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. While that's happening, while, 3/4 of the hive is out just massacring every life form that it can get its little jaws on and taking it back to the hive for food, the rest of the hive is constantly excavating, building, creating new chambers, working in concert to build these incredibly architecturally intricate structures underground. Crazy shit, dude.
Yeah, they don't need no opposable thumbs.
They've got better.
Yeah.
They're the Borg, basically. They're one entity of many individuals.
Yeah, that's why so many people are terrified of them.
Yeah. Bruh, I don't know what you're on about, but the reason I don't know why you're talking about STDs, so I'm gonna put you in a timeout. When you come back, get on topic, bro. I don't know what you're on about. I give you a second chance. I usually would just ban you. Every day the opossum would come by and eat up the dead bee pile outside the hive. Well, that's the circle of life, man. The beauty of like nature is that nothing goes to waste. Like in like kind of the circle of nutrients, nothing, no animal is wasted. No being is ever wasted.
Yeah, they don't fucking dip their dead in chemicals and bury it underground and shit.
And even our like desire to try and make that a thing on a long enough time scale, it all returns to the earth. Nothing that we try and like preserve our dead or whatever, but eventually on a long enough time scale, everything that we could put on them and in them just becomes, it goes back to the elemental things. And a bunch of little organisms have a field day with it. And then a bunch of larger organisms have a field day with those littler organisms, and the circle of life goes on. We try and interrupt it, but
I'm glad that more. I guess Colorado just passed a law too, allowing composting of your body.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that sort of thing is just going to become.
At a certain point, we're just going to run out of room of places to put bodies.
We're already getting there. We're already getting to the point where like municipalities are moving cemeteries around and shit. It's already getting to be a complete and utter like nightmare to maintain these weird little graveyards and stuff. So I think it's only a matter of time for human beings where necessity just kind of drives a more holistic approach to getting rid of a body.
Either that or you get fucking graveyard skyscrapers and shit.
Underground like upside down underground skyscrapers filled with corpses. The corpse vault.
Yeah.
Nah. You move the headstones, but not the bodies. Oh yeah, poltergeist. So many people are struggling. Why spend so much on burial? Good question. I don't know.
It's a cultural thing, and it's a, societal thing. It's a capitalist enterprise.
Yep.
But it's not every country. Like, there's other countries where the vast majority of people just cremate their loved ones. But here we have that Christian idea of, like, the bodies have to be intact for the revelation.
Yeah, I don't know. It none of it makes all that much sense to me, but death is a tradition of living, and people want good thoughts of the loved one. Yeah, I know. I mean, I understand why people commemorate dead people. It's the reason or the means by which they do it that kind of boggles my mind.
Preservation.
Right, like I'm gonna make sure that your body stays relatively uncorrupted under the ground for 100 years or whatever. That sort of thing, the preservation of body, is based on this idea that Jesus is going to come back and the dead are going to rise out of their graves. You know what I mean?
And like the Egyptians were in the same boat. They preserved them to like metaphysically go into the afterlife and shit.
Right, yeah. They believed that they went into the afterlife with everything that they had near their body.
Yeah.
And so they, preserved all their organs and put them in separate jars and stuff so they would have everything they needed to create their, like, spirit world on the other side. And that's why, like, pharaohs were buried with such insane riches and shit, is because, according to their religion, they went on to continue their rule in the afterlife, surrounded by the opulence and stuff that they took with them. In Egyptian society, you can take it with you.
It's a little bit cooler than the Christian zombie apocalypse, dude. It really is what it is. It's a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
The zombies aren't necessarily instrumental to the apocalypse, but there's a lot
It's going to be horrifying.
Yeah.
Like, people celebrate it, but it's going to be horrifying, bro. Yeah. Dude, I'm so interested in that shit. I was watching this talk the other day, kind of a conspiracy theory guy. I can't remember what his name is, but he was talking about this kind of like growing movement in archaeology towards excavating these super ancient sites, because they're starting to find, like, for the longest time we thought that, like, Egyptian society was about as old as it got for, like, a really truly monolithic society. And even now we don't fully understand how and why they built the monuments that they did, like some of the things that they achieved, some of the like, it seems to defy our expectations for their level of technology. And one of the things that is kind of like implied is that civilization is far older than we think it is. Like, in fact, a lot of it contends that the Egyptian civilization built on the ruins of an even older civilization. And they use the Sphinx. The Sphinx is kind of an enigma in the archaeological world, because you won't find any kind of definitive answer to some of the basic questions of the Sphinx. Like, why is there a bunch of, like, water erosion around the Sphinx? It's in the middle of a desert. Now, it used to be in a place that was very verdant and lush and jungle-like and shit. Or at least that area used to be. But way before we think that there were any human civilizations.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people think that, like, that's evidence. And there's, other monoliths in Egypt that seem to be a little older, or built like monuments that are built around other monuments. There's Gobekli Tepe, I think is the name of it. Gobekli Tepe, I think is the name of this excavation, where they're finding these big kind of like monolithic stone structures and shit, but it's thousands of years before the Egyptian civilization started doing it. And I guess the contention is that the Egyptians had knowledge and abilities that seem beyond their capabilities because they based those on previous civilizations that had come before them. And there's not consensus obviously amongst archaeologists on any of this, and a lot of it is probably like a little hyped up and conspiratorial, but What I do know is that you can find that scientists are slowly but surely doing these kind of like ground penetrating radar scans of the jungle. And they're scanning, like it started when they started scanning around the ancient kind of area at the edges of what used to be Tenochtitlan, which was like the Aztec capital in what's now modern day Mexico. And when you go out into the jungles of some of these older cities, not just Tenochtitlan, you kind of expect like, okay, here's where the city's going to end, and they just keep going. Like they keep finding deeper and deeper jungle that is completely overgrown, obvious geometric structures created by humans. And so, a lot of people are, conspiratorial though they may be at this point, saying that there used to be a high, in our, according to what we thought human beings were doing, like during a time when we assumed that human beings were scrabbling around as hunter-gatherers, there was this ancient civilization in South America, Central America, parts of Mexico, that was just sprawling and completely and utterly lost to time. Just basically eaten by the jungle, recycled and repurposed by the jungle to such a degree that when you just walk through the jungle, you can't even tell it's there. You can only see it if you scan it from above. I've always wondered how much, if any, of archaeological finders where people trolling or some ancient human just writing down pure fiction. Over 10,000 years ago, the Sahara was the largest fertile plain on Earth. It periodically cycles from wet to dry based on a gradual wobble of the Earth poles. You're right. So, but that's a time that if you talk to, like, by modern archaeological standards, 10,000 years ago, mankind was scrabbling around in the dirt, small little tribal, loosely organized groups of hunter-gatherers, right? That's the current wisdom tells you that 10,000 plus years ago, human beings were at that state of civilizational progress. And there's a lot of sites kind of dotted over the globe that seem to imply that human beings were not only far more civilized than we assume that they were in terms of creating things, temples, cities, but far more technologically advanced, which of course implies that maybe it's even older still, right? Like what if a lot of these ancient sites that we're finding, like Göbekli Tepe or some of the sites that they're excavating in South America out of the jungle and shit, what if they're built on the bones of an even more ancient society? You know what I mean? That's the implication. Because when you look at Egypt, the technological expansion and the ability for human beings to build these huge, lasting monuments and stuff just seems to spring out of nowhere. It's a very, very strange happening. It's like human beings went from this loosely organized, band of hunter-gatherer tribes and stuff to creating these like ponderous monoliths over the course of a couple of generations. And it's like, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Doesn't make a lot of sense that they were able to build things now that we, extrapolating their technological levels, really struggle to explain even today. Like, it would be a huge, massive undertaking for us to create those pyramids today, even with our modern, like, water pressure drills and laser cutting techniques and heavy manufacturing equipment and shit. It would be a huge, monumental insanely expensive, insanely technically challenging thing for us to build those structures today. And yet people that lived in what we call like the Stone Age or the Copper Age or whatever were just doing it. I read somewhere that it would be at least 5 years with modern day tech. Yeah, 5 years worth of construction and billions of dollars worth of man hours and machinery and specialized equipment and shit. It would be it would be the biggest undertaking in human history for us to build Khufu's pyramid. It would be a global undertaking. It would be a huge human endeavor. That's with giant boats that can carry these things, carry these multiple fucking 100-ton blocks. It's just really insane. Yeah, I mean, there almost certainly are. What is an example of something that's so insane we can't explain it? Often I'm not convinced ancient people could not have figured out something to do it. So one of the things that's commonly talked about is let's just like the pyramids, right? Pyramids are made of these absolutely perfectly cut stone, granite blocks, right? Hundreds of tons apiece. These blocks were quarried miles and miles and miles and miles from where the actual pyramids are built. They're not, so they had to be quarried there as 100-ton structures, multiple 100-ton structures, and then transported at a time where human beings, barely, they hadn't even, like, they didn't even have a functioning wheel and axle yet. That could handle like massive loads like that. We don't even know how they moved it. There are people that say, oh, maybe they floated it on barges. It would have required like them to float those things, like even with the most wild expectations for their technology to create boats at the time. They would have to do it one block by one block. It would take like 1,000 years to build the thing. And that's not even accounting for how did they move it? How did they get it onto the boat in the first place? How did they quarry it? Some of these cuts are so geometrically perfect that scientists have looked at it and thought that it was done by modern machinery. Yet we're talking about people that were working with stone and copper tools. They don't even know how they do it, how they cut it, let alone after it's cut, moved it from 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 miles away, wherever it was, to the construction site. So you can find various like attempts at explanations, but as far as I know, there is not one singular explanation for how this was done. I've seen the dude that explains how a Stone Age people might have erected a giant monolith. It doesn't explain how they cut it or moved it. It just explains how they got it to stick up in the ground. Like that little piece of discovery is probably a good one, but like that wasn't you. They didn't dig pits for each thing every time they had to move it. Maybe they had more advanced technology than we do today. Maybe it wasn't more advanced than we have today, but maybe it was way closer to what we have today than we assume. There's a video showing those. Yeah, we know how they quarried it. It's not the fact that they were able to like maybe take a chunk of granite. Like, that's not the thing. It's the fact that they were able to precisely quarry granite to specification in a mathematical like problem, an engineering problem so precise that if it was off by just a millimeter or a hair here and there, the whole structure is not going to appear the way it should. So geometrically perfect quarrying of a stone and then moving those multiple 100-ton stones from one place to the next. You know, it's ponderous. It's absolutely ponderous how much these people were capable of. And that's before you even start going into some of the monolithic sites, including the Sphinx, that seem to be built on a much older structure, near or on top of a much, much older structure. And you start to get the idea that maybe we don't really fully understand what was going on then. Maybe our history is relatively incomplete. Maybe they weren't so primitive after all. Maybe not. Or maybe the aliens done came down and helped them. Possible. It's possible that the human conception of gods started early on in our race's history with the visitation of a vastly advanced race with a certain aesthetic. They showed up, they shared their machinery with us for a time and helped us build monuments to them and changed the fundamental nature of how human philosophy and religion evolved and left us with these reminders of their maybe these things were left as a reminder to the civilization later on of the existence of these alien beings.
Yeah, maybe they just can't be fucked to come back.
Or maybe something happened to them.
Yeah.
You know, maybe there were a starfaring species that kind of bounced around and benevolently bestowed its knowledge of its existence on the, you know, local populace, and maybe they landed on a planet that they misjudged. Instead of reacting with awe, maybe they found a species that was a little more insectoid in composition and just got swarmed and eaten. You know? Yeah, maybe like palling around with us humans for a couple of thousand years, they caught some kind of like human herpes or something that ended up like killing their whole civilization. You sound like Graham Hancock. I'm just spitballing things. I don't actually believe any of this stuff. I'm just saying. Fun to think about.
Yeah, it's one of those unprovable.
Right. It's an unfalsifiable hypothesis at this point. You don't have a unified explanation for how these civilizations built what they built. In fact, there's an assumption of certain technologies existing that doesn't take into account that there were civilizations prior to Egyptians making monolithic structures and shit. And so we probably have just incomplete data. And so that leaves a huge room for speculation, right? That like opens the door just a little crack to this, like, aliens came down and they didn't leave any of their technology with us, obviously. Maybe they were conservationists. Maybe the aliens had a purpose that we can't fathom. Maybe they came down here to not only instill humanity with the idea that it could build these bigger structures, but they were very like particular about leaving behind any of their technology. They didn't want to influence us that way. They felt we deserved the ability to figure it out for ourselves or whatever they're, Who's Graham Hancock? He's like a conspiracy dude. I don't know. He's one of the dudes that'll talk about shit like this, ancient aliens and whatnot. Some people can't understand the concept of entertaining an idea for fun or for a thought experiment without thinking you must believe this because you said it. Okay, so yeah, no, I totally agree. Like I said, I'm just kind of spitballing funny ideas and stuff here. I don't think that there's any more evidence for alien visitation in the Egyptian civilization than there is for civilization being tens of thousands of years, maybe even hundreds of thousands of years older than we think it is. It's just funny because as of now, the data set that we have on human civilizational history is incomplete. It's based on a very limited data set, and as we discover more and more of it, that data is going to have to change to accommodate it, and it's slowly but surely starting to do it.
Like maybe they just had more sustainable tools that broke down over time instead of metals and shit like that.
Yeah. They had some, very rudimentary type of technology that's just none of it has survived. Just broken down by the changing of the climate and thousands of years, or maybe even just built on top of by the progenitors of modern civilizations. A lot of these ancient cities in Mesopotamia and the cradle of civilization and Syria and all this shit, maybe a lot of those are built on the bones of an even older city. And it's just been lost to time or recontextualized as religion.
Maybe Atlantis, who knows?
Yeah. I mean, there are, examples of these cities that are now under the ocean that we've rediscovered, A disease could have swept through and cleared out a civilization. I mean, it almost certainly did. We've seen it happen over the course of just recorded history. Influenza killed something like 50% of humanity. The Spanish flu or whatever, the Black Death. I mean, we've seen these huge sweeping diseases come out and clean out a civilization before. Who's to say that didn't happen to a far more advanced than we think? Yeah, humans were reduced to about 5,000 individuals or less at one point in history by climate change. All right, I'm out of here. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.